Angelou. When you learn, teach, and when you get, give. Welcome to Conversations with Verdel Jones. I'm your host, Verdel Jones. And being an educator at heart, I'm dedicated to sharing conversations that inform and enlighten in the hopes that you learn something you may not have known. And remember, in the words of Maya Angelou, when you learn, teach, and when you get, give. We have an awesome show for you today. As you can see, I'm here with a special guest. I'm going to introduce her in a minute. But before we do that, I just wanted to remind everyone that you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is Deli Teach. Make sure you subscribe to that so you will know when any new videos come up. I download any videos, you'll get that notification. So make sure you subscribe to Deli Teach. You can also follow me on Twitter at Deli Teach as well. Also, before we start, I want to let you know that I would like to thank our sponsor, Miss Nancy Vargas Johnson. She is a realtor, so if you're looking for a home within the Nassau or Suffolk County area, Nancy is your woman. So we'll just put up her information. So again, if you're in the market to buy a home or you're selling your home, make sure you look her up, Nancy Vargas Johnson. We love Nancy. She's great. So make sure you check that out. I also want to let you guys know that we are having an author showcase on November 4th. So that author showcase is going to be at Theater 294 in Farmingdale. You can get your tickets at Eventbrite, and there's a link right on that flyer there. So you want to make sure that you get your tickets. It's $10. There's going to be 7. You'll see the 7 authors there. They're going to present. They are going to talk about their book, their brand. You'll be able to taste some local wines, have some snacks, and really get a lot of information about these authors and the books that they wrote. So please make sure you hit that link there, or go to that link there on Eventbrite and get your tickets today. And the last thing I want to share with you is we are looking for sponsors. We always want sponsors, whether it be for the Conversations with Verdel Jones show or for our author showcase. So if you're interested in being a sponsor for the showcase on November 4th, you can go to my website, or there's contact information there. My executive assistant for marketing, Cassandra Lalel, is on there, and also myself. You can email us for any details about that. You can go to my website, it's verdeljones.com. So let's get into it, because I'm so excited about this show that we're going to have today. We have Sherry Ann Best with us. She holds her Bachelor's of Arts as well as her Master's of Social Work from Stony Brook University. She has also 2 postgraduate certifications in Trauma Studies and Addiction Studies from Adelphi University. She's been in practice, her clinical experience spans 15 years. She's worked with children, adults, and families in a variety of settings. And in 2001, Ms. Best also launched a psychotherapy practice, which today is thriving. It's a thriving group practice, and that's right in Farmingdale, and it's called Broad Hollow Psychotherapy, PLLC. And I'll have to ask you what the PLLC means. So I want to welcome you. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So what I really wanted to do today, and as I was sharing with you, outside, we were kind of, going over some of what we're going to be talking about tonight. One of the things that kind of really sparked my wanting to have a mental health professional come to the studio and come on the Conversations with Verdel Jones show was an email that I got from the schoolcrisiscenter.org. And they were talking about how to talk to our children about all of the tragedies we see, from the mass shootings to terrorists here and abroad, the environmental, tragedies that are going on. How do we begin to talk to our children about that? So that's why I wanted to have you on, because I think it's important for parents to have an understanding how to actually, talk to your kids about that. So I'm happy to have you here. We're going to get into that conversation, but I also want our audience to know a little bit more about you. So how did you get into the field of mental health?
It was something that I wanted to do for a really long time, and I went to Stony Brook, and I originally was a psychology major.
Okay.
Although I've gotten back into how the brain works and all that stuff today, it was something that wasn't really my thing then, and so one of the professors said, if you'd like to be a therapist, why not go for the social work degree? And so that's what I decided to do. It was just something that I always wanted. I was always interested in why people did the things that they did. And so that's how I got into it.
You know, it's interesting that you said you were a psychology major, because a lot of, you know, I work in a school district, and I've worked with kids for over 20-something years. And when a lot of them start with psychology, but I'm not sure if they really understand what a psychology major actually is. So what's the difference between the psychology major and then the social work major? And because I think they're going to talk to people and help them, and I'm sure psychology majors do, but what's the difference between the two?
I think one of the biggest differences is that social work is so broad.
Yeah.
Clinical social work is one aspect of it.
Right.
You can go into so many different areas in social work, but I think that the main components, it's definitely working with people. It's about helping people to do better, to advocate, advocate for social justice, to meet the people where they are, to identify the fact that they don't live in a bubble.
Right.
They don't live in a vacuum. That if someone comes to you and they say, I'm having a really hard time, I'm not making ends meet, I can't eat, you're not going to just talk about that.
Right.
The social worker is going to help
you.
Help
them through it.
Right, and help
you
to
well, how do you feel?
Food,
with no food.
You're not just going to talk
about
how you can't eat.
Right.
And I'm sure that psychologists can do that as well, but that's part of the practice.
Okay.
It's the community resources. It's connecting people with things. It's the micro and the macro. So I think that's the biggest difference with social work.
Actually connecting them to things so they can manage whatever crisis they may have in their life. Okay.
The concrete needs that they have to be empowered.
Right. Yeah. And in the district that I work in, we have 2 social workers in our district, and they are, as a matter of fact, today I just emailed them and asked them about. We have students that are coming from Puerto Rico that were displaced, you know, and thoughts and prayers are with everybody there, and hoping that things improve quickly. But these children are coming from Puerto Rico. They don't have, you know, one of the immunizations. So I reached out to the social workers and said, well, and from what I understand, this immunization is a lot of money. This vaccination is a lot of money. So I reached out to them. Do you know of any services where they can get, you know, a reduced cost or free, you know, vaccine? And they, you know, got right back to me, and they knew the resource to tap into to get that done. So it's addressing an issue in a concrete way, kind of. Yeah.
Right. And where psychologists, they can do clinical practice, but there's also psychological testing.
Right, and that's what a lot of our psychologists do within the school setting.
Right.
And you know, you had mentioned with social workers, it's so broad. I had my aunt is a social worker, and she actually worked for a law firm.
Okay.
And she also worked as a child custody investigator. So it is so broad, and it all goes back to, I love what you say, it's really addressing and giving concrete, you know, answers to issues that they might have. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about also is individuals' reluctancy to actually get the help that they need, you know, especially in the African American community. And, you know, you hear that all the time. So I wanted to ask you, do you see that? Is that a real thing? Or is it just people in general? How do you kind of, you know, see that? Or what have you seen in practice?
I think that culture definitely dictates the type of help you get.
Okay.
I would say that now, since I've been doing this for so long, I probably do see more African Americans than anything, but I think that's because of word of mouth.
Okay.
I think that's because a lot of people, I'm seeing a former client's neighbor, or someone's sister, or someone's mom or child, or you know, something like that. And so I've kind of built things up in that way. But I think that in general, the idea to actually reach out for help is something that it's hard for people to do.
Sure.
And again, depending on the culture, depending on your gender even, I probably see more women than men.
Right.
Even though that is increasing as well, but I definitely see more women than men. And for a long time, I didn't see a lot of African American clients.
Wow.
For a really long time.
And the interesting thing about that is, you know, the traumas that we face within our communities, you know, it's a serious thing. So if anything, you would hope that they would seek help for the traumas that they experience within their communities, and it seems like it's less than, or they're forced to do something, you know, if a situation comes up and they're forced to be in counseling, let's say, as opposed to being, you know, proactive. You know, the bottom has to fall out before, you know, you see them come.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. And it's such an important thing. You know, it really is to be able to, you know, in counseling, I think a lot of people, you know, think that they have, it's a stigma to it.
Yeah.
So how does a person know when it's time for them to seek the help that they need?
Well, a lot of times I'll say that they're getting hints from their loved ones that maybe they need to do something.
Right.
That's probably the biggest one.
Yeah.
I think that probably all of the men that I see come in through their mothers or their spouse or their significant other, for the most part.
Right.
For the most part. I have someone that I'm waiting to see that says, you know, everyone's telling me I need to do this, so maybe it's time for me to do it. So that's a good sign.
Right.
If you're having difficulty in school consistently or work, if you feel like, if you notice that your emotional expression is very extreme for a long period of time, I think that's also, obviously if you're having thoughts of hurting yourself, you want to reach out to get help. It's really about a decline in functioning.
Yeah.
If you were doing this at one point and now you're not able to do it, I think that that's, you know, when you're diagnosing somebody, no matter what the symptoms are, that last piece is always about impairment in functioning in different areas. And so that's what makes something an actual disorder, that impairment.
A thing.
Right.
Because it impacts you at such an extent that you can't function as you normally would function, basically.
I think therapy is also about mental wellness.
Yeah.
So you don't necessarily have to be at your lowest.
That's
It
true.
could be about improving things also. So enhancing your strengths. So it goes both ways.
And do you see people that come to you that have, you know, they don't come because there's necessarily a crisis, but they want to make improvements, as you said. Do you get a lot of people doing that?
I have someone right now who's trying to get through her semester in nursing school.
Okay.
And so she just wants the support to do that.
Okay.
I see that a lot with couples as well. I don't see couples as much as I used to.
Okay.
But I do see where couples will come in because they want to improve on things. Not necessarily because they're, you know, wanting to end their relationship.
Right, okay.
So
So they're being
I probably do see
proactive.
that. Absolutely.
Really, yeah,
Absolutely.
which is great. And I wish in you know, especially in the African American community, that we were more proactive in our approach to getting the mental health counseling that we need, as opposed to the reactive. You know, you know, as I shared, I've been in education for over 20 years, and within the last few years, maybe 5, 10 years or so, I've seen so many students with anxiety, depression, school phobia. Why do you think it's become more and more prevalent with our children?
They're exposed to a whole lot. I think the 13-year-old of today is not like it was 20 years ago.
Definitely.
They're exposed to a whole lot. It's a different time. I also think that they are open to help as well and reaching out. I think that's a part of it too. There's a lot of pressures on kids. They're involved in their academics, their sports, their, you know, after school clubs and cheerleading competition. There's so much. There's so much to do. There's so many different ways that they're told that they have to achieve that I think that sometimes it can be too much. There's a lot of pressure put on them.
A lot of pressure. You know, I was, I'm the 504 coordinator for my district, and we were, you know, we had 504 meetings, initial meetings today, and you know, the teachers were sharing some stories, and you know, you have kindergartners saying, I'm stressed. You know, and they're 5. You know, I don't know if they really are, or is it something that they hear their parents say all the time and they mimic it, you know. But I have seen I can't tell you I mean, you know, the number of students that have these issues. A lot of the 504 students that are, you know, our initial 504 meetings, I would say 90% of them are ADHD. So there's attentive, you know, inattentiveness or hyperactivity. You know, so we see so much of that more and more and more. And we always try to say, well, is it because we can identify it more now, or is it real?
Right.
You know,
Right.
and that's the question. So we wanted to talk about the you know, how do parents talk to their children about traumatic experiences? There's been so many.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of it may have to do with some coping skills. And I know that I've seen more students that don't have those coping skills.
Right.
So how do we begin for our parents to help their children develop those coping skills? And when I say coping skills, for, you know, people who are working with students or in the mental health profession, we know what that means. But what does that mean for a child, and how a parent can kind of, you know, help their child with it?
It's age specific. That's the first thing. It's all about, you just said that there's a 5-year-old that's saying that they're stressed.
Right.
So is there a parent that's home that's saying, I'm stressed?
Right.
You are the hugest role model for your child, and so they're watching what you do. And in times like these, they're watching what you're doing. They're looking to you for safety. No matter what age.
Right.
No matter what age, that 15-year-old still wants to be safe, and they're still looking at you in order, you know, as a way of doing that. And so I think that's the first thing, that you have to make sure that you're okay.
Yeah.
And that you're getting the support that you need. It's that old the airplane that you have to take in the oxygen
on yourself first.
Right, exactly.
Right.
And so I think that's really important. So if you're having a hard time, and if you're struggling with all of this, which is perfectly natural, and obviously that's what's happening.
Right.
You have to imagine what's going on with my
With
child.
your child, exactly.
Right, because this is a really tough time right now. And so what's going on with my child? And so part of it is that they want to be safe. You really can't do anything if you're not safe, right? Because if you're hyper vigilant, if you're trying to figure out what's going on, if you're looking around your shoulder to see what's next, it's hard to concentrate on what's going on, right? It's hard to really do well in school if you just don't know what's going on around you. And so safety is really important. And I think that one of the things that you have to do is you have to show your child how you keep them safe. That's the first thing. This is the reason why we do A, B, and C. This is the reason why I want you to call me. This is the reason why you put on your seatbelt. You know, these are the things that I'm doing as your parent to keep you safe.
To keep you safe.
And that's a part of it, right? Also, being able to be the one that they talk to is also going to allow them to be safe, because the information that you provide to them is going to allow them to figure out what they're going to do.
Right.
So being that open person, that's really important and honest. It's okay to say, you know what, the events that's going on right now, they're really making me sad. I'm really upset about it. But if you are just not able to keep it together all the time, and your kids are seeing that, you're modeling that to them. And so that you may need to get some help for yourself, so that you can help them. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of it.
Yeah, we were talking earlier today about 9/11, and when that happened, our children were young, and that was just such a, you know, overwhelmingly tragic situation. And I know, you know, looking back, I didn't know how to talk to, you know, our children about those events, and I noticed that it affected not our youngest one, but our older child. It definitely affected, because he knew what was going on, and you know, he would be scared of planes that went overhead. You know, so. And as parents, you know, and like I said, I've been in education, so I thought I knew a little something, but I really didn't know how to talk to him about it, because I was having a hard time and being, you know, just upset about it, and not really being, you know, not validating what he was saying, absolutely, but not really, you know, knowing how to walk him through that, you know, because they're scared, you know.
Unfortunately, there have been so many other events that we are getting better with that in some kind of a way. So 9/11, I mean, I think that's a little bit different because that was something that was just so out of the
Out of
norm,
it, right,
that
exactly.
a lot of people were very overwhelmed by that
goodness,
experience.
right.
And so I definitely understand. But 16 years later,
Right.
and so many other events later, I think that we do have some of that knowledge. I'm sure that
Right.
you're better now, or you're more
Right,
knowledgeable
yeah,
today.
exactly, right, yeah. Right, exactly. That was something that we've never seen
Right,
before,
yeah.
you know, in this time, you know, and it was just, and it's sad to say that, yeah, we are getting better at it, you know, supporting our children, getting them the services that they need when, you know, when these tragic events happen. You know, we have, even, you know, when you look at the news and it's a national thing, even at a local level, we have tragedies that happen, whether it be car accidents or, you know, we have, you know, heroin is a big thing. And those are just as traumatic because it's closer to home for the students, you know. So we've done a better job of getting the grief counselors in and, you know, being able to all hands on deck.
Right,
you
and
know?
knowing that that's what you need to do.
Right.
And I think that it's really important also to know that right after an event, whatever emotion you have, it's really normal. You know, that's not necessarily pathological for you to be responding to what's going on, what happened in Vegas.
Right.
It just happened.
Right, right.
You know, so I think that there's a certain amount of time that you should allow for a normal display of emotion without thinking that it's anything more than that.
Right.
Now, months later, then that's a different story.
Right.
Time is a factor, but also behavior. So if you're avoiding certain situations, like what you said with your son,
With the
with the
airplanes going
airplanes, that
over.
could have
Right.
been an issue. It may not have been, but that's something to think about,
Right.
to consider. So if you're avoiding, if you're re-experiencing certain things, nightmares,
Right.
I think the avoidance is probably the biggest thing. Re-experiencing, you know, having flashbacks, things of that
Right,
nature,
right.
for an extended period of time, then it's probably time to maybe look into something, because it could be turned into a post-traumatic stress disorder.
Right.
Acute stress is something that occurs within the first 30 days of a traumatic event.
Okay.
And that's usually pretty normal. It can be.
Right.
But that's also the time to really have the conversations and do the work,
And do the work.
in that
Right.
in that time frame.
Right.
Anything beyond that, you probably want to do a little bit more.
Yeah. You know, like you said, we are getting, you know, better at that. And I think with our children now, you know, in this day and age, I was talking to a teacher and they were talking about how a he's noticing that children don't communicate the way that they, you know, used to. They can't do a presentation. They're looking at the board instead of talking to, you know, the individuals in the classroom. You know, so social media probably has a lot to do with that. So if students aren't good communicators, children aren't good communicators, how do we, you know, and they're not able to articulate the way that they, or how they feel, how do we look for signs and symptoms in our children to kind of indicate that, you know what, maybe I need to sit down with them and talk to them or get some, you know, outside help?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think that children, they do communicate. It may not always be verbal.
Verbal, right.
But they are always communicating in their play. A child's job is really to do well in school.
Right.
And if that's not happening, that could really be a problem. It could be a problem. I think that if you're noticing that they're sleeping a lot, any type of change in behavior,
right,
is something to take a look
right.
at. And maybe they may not be able to tell you a whole lot,
Yeah.
but you can ask some questions and just kind of say, you know, how are you feeling? What's going on? I think around an event, I think it's really important to assume that they do know what's going on. If you have a child that you pretty much are, they're with you all the time, or you can control what they see, someone that's not going to school, maybe I'm talking about like 2 or 3 years old,
right.
but even that, if they're going to preschool, you still get information.
They hear it,
right?
they sure do.
If there's a time where you're not exactly sure who they're with and how they're getting their information, it's probably a good idea to have a conversation with them. And it doesn't have to be, it could be something as simple as, did you hear about anything in school today? Or did you hear anything? Did anyone tell you anything today? Or was there anything that you heard about that has you upset? You know, and either they did or they didn't.
Okay, and it doesn't hurt to ask that question.
Not
Right.
at all. Not at all. It's
Right,
a
because
good idea.
because you wonder, you know, if I bring this up, is it going to cause them to be upset? If I don't bring this up, will they be upset and I won't know it? So what if you know, you have that conversation and the child, you know, starts to get upset? How do you then, because they clearly know what's going on, how do you begin to, like, should you just stop that conversation or should you take it to a different place?
I think it's okay to express those emotions.
Yeah.
I think that's what you have to do. I think that's really important. Again, it's really about the time. If you're having one conversation or an initial conversation and there's emotion, I think that's okay.
That's okay,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, because it gives them an opportunity to express themselves.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You know,
and they will ask you as many questions as they need to ask you,
right?
In order to feel safe.
Now,
or to at least begin that process.
Now, in the what sparked me wanting to kind of discuss this issue was, you know, this article that I got from the School Crisis Center, and one of the things they had mentioned was behaviors in teenagers and how they kind of you know, how they kind of take or they show what's going on with them by doing certain things. I know teenagers are a little bit different than children, you know, little children. And one of the things they mentioned was, you know, teenagers they want to protect themselves. So in situations like this, they might seem isolated, and parents might not appreciate that or understand that. What are some things that teenagers kind of exhibit when, you know, differently from a child, that parents should be aware of?
They can go more inward a lot of times.
Yeah.
Their whole world is on a phone.
Right.
And so they could be connecting with their friends on social media, through text messages.
Right. Yeah.
I think it's really important to, developmentally, that's on cue, really. You know, they're at a stage where they're looking for independence. They're trying to establish their independence. Going back to the parents' coping style, I think that's important. So what's the foundation that you laid as a parent?
Right.
Are you someone that they can go to? Are you going to tell them, tighten up?
Right.
Suck it up.
Suck it up. Right.
You know,
right,
if that's your response, then they're most likely not going to come to you. Or again, if you're out of control, children, no matter what, they also want to take care of their parents. They want to make sure that they're okay the same way parents want to make sure that their children are okay.
Right.
And so, you know, and just developmentally, again, children are very self-centered.
Yeah.
So
Anyway.
I don't want to make mom upset. I don't want to make dad upset. You know, they think that they have that kind of power.
Okay.
That they can make you. I mean, they can make you upset, right? But having this discussion is going to make mom upset or make dad upset.
Right.
So I don't want to.
I'm not going to bring it up.
Right. So I don't want to do that, and so they use other means.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's not easy, and you know, with all that's going on. And there's so many emotions. There's so, you know, it's just very difficult to know which way to go.
Right.
You know, with your children, when you see these events, because you, like you said, at a young age, you don't know if they know. So, but asking those questions, I think, is key. Just starting that conversation, and I love the fact that you say it's, you know, a child needs to know that they can come to you, you know, and starting that relationship. Do you work with parents to develop relationships with their children?
If a parent comes to me for therapy for their child, they must work with me. The parents have to.
Okay.
If they won't agree to that, then I'm not going to see the child.
Right.
Because I can't work and I can't do the work in a session and then expect the child to go back into an exact same environment and do all of this work.
Right.
There are a lot of times that parents come and they're kind of like, you know, fix my kid. And it's like, well, you have to do this with me.
It's a family system.
Absolutely.
You know, your child at, you know, 10 years old didn't get that way because they were living with someone else.
Right.
You know, so it really is a family approach. It just brings me back to, you know, with anorexics, you know, it's about educating the whole family and the whole family working together. You know, I just think I know that that's like a, you know, the type of therapy that, you know, they use with individuals who have eating disorders, you know, teenagers or what have you. you know, it's important for everybody to be on board, and that's a challenge.
It is a challenge.
That is a very big challenge.
It is a challenge. I've lost referrals because of that.
Right.
Because again, I make that very clear that it's expected for you to be a part of this, an active part of it.
Right.
And in fact, there are certain certain modalities that I use. There's something called trauma-focused CBT. Or trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy.
Love cognitive behavioral therapy.
It is parent and child.
Right.
Throughout that process, throughout the entire process.
Right, because if you're telling a child, you know, your thoughts can kind of dictate how you feel about things, and the parent is saying something, you know, totally opposite,
right,
the work can't be done.
Right, exactly.
You know, the work can't be done. One of the things I definitely wanted to touch base on also with the anxiety and the depression and school phobia and all of that, you know, I see a lot of students, as I think I had mentioned before, with ADHD. Medication is something that I was in 2 meetings today, and in a lot of meetings that you know, the 504 meetings, parents either are for medication or not for medication. You know, and how do we know when how do parents know when it's the right time for a child to possibly medicate it for whatever, you know, mental health, you know, condition that they have?
I think that it's always the choice.
Yeah.
It's always the parent's choice, the client's choice.
Right.
Whether they're going to do that or not.
Yeah, you can't push it on them.
Right, exactly. So a biochemical problem needs a biochemical fix. And so sometimes that's medication. It can be diet, it can be exercise, it can be yoga, it can be meditation. There's a lot of different things that you can do.
Right.
So that's the first thing, that it doesn't always have to be medication. But, you know, and some people are really worried about, medications are not, for obvious reasons, they're not tested on children. So you don't necessarily know what it's going to do until they take it.
Right. And one of the things that I've learned also is certain medications yield certain results and responses. Like you said, you don't know how they're going to act. So a lot of times, parents need to know, if they're going that route, that you might have to go through a few medications
for a long time sometimes.
Right, in order, and especially with children, because developmentally their hormones are so different and they change, and you have to change up the medication. And it's a very frustrating, you know, because I hear parents talking about it, it's a very frustrating endeavor.
I think that's just, it's a part of the process.
Right.
So, you know how the boys come back in the 9th grade and they're like 6 feet tall.
Right.
So that's gonna warrant a change in medication. It could possibly.
Right.
A girl, after she's started her period, that could also spark a change in medication.
Right.
There are a lot of different things that impact that. Diet, weight gain, weight loss. There's a lot of different things that would impact that. And so I think that if you're using psychotropic medication to understand that the change is a part of the process.
It's part of the process. Right.
Be a part of the process.
Yeah. And then there's, you know, there's different types of medications. There's, our nurse always, you know, she's an expert in this stuff. She's really great with it. And, you know, there's just different types of medications, the stimulants and, you know, the time released and the, you know, so there's a lot of different things that parents need to be aware of. Like you said, it is a process.
Right. It's you really do have to have a good relationship with the psychiatrist or the nurse practitioner.
Right.
So that they can help guide you through the process.
Yeah.
You're going to typically meet with them at least initially monthly to see how things are going. So it's important for a child to just kind of know themselves and know their bodies and know what feels off.
Right.
Now that they're taking this medication, and that's part of the education that I provide when I'm meeting with children. It's just, so first know that if you feel sluggish or if you can't sleep or sleeping too much, that's not the goal of the medication. That's not where we want you to be. And it's okay to tell your doctor or the nurse that this is making me feel this way.
Right.
Or they've gained a lot of weight as a result. You know, this is not how I want to be. I don't want to fix one thing and then have another
something
issue.
else, right?
So it's really about having a ongoing dialogue with the prescriber.
Exactly.
And having that relationship.
And having and to know when it's time to move on from something. One of a parent shared with us that her child said he feels emotional when he takes this specific medication, and we kind of said maybe in an ADHD child, maybe his brain is slowing down so much that he's realizing that he has these emotions, because usually he's like he's all over the place. So it really, we try to teach children to advocate for themselves, and that's another skill that children need to be able to tell their parents, like you said, going back to being able to talk to your parent about what's going on with them, and advocating for themselves, and letting people know that I feel this way or that way.
I think, again, part of the education that I provide to children, I've been working with kids for a really long time.
Okay.
And so I'm really about children empowerment. And so I think it's really important to provide kids with choices.
Yeah.
Or for them to feel like they're a part
Absolutely.
of the process as it pertains to treatment. And so that's one of the things that I tell them, that, you need to talk to the psychiatrist and let them know. I think a lot of times we put doctors on a really high pedestal.
Yes.
And so we're afraid to talk to them, and even the parents may be.
Right.
So that's a
right.
a big piece of what I talk to them about. That it's okay to say, I'm not feeling good with this. I don't feel any better. This is making me feel worse, and sometimes that can happen. That's one of the things that can happen. That you could be prescribing an antidepressant, for example, and it works the opposite. That the child is increasingly depressed. So, but you have to know. Okay, I was here. Now I'm here.
Right, I took a couple steps back.
I need to let them know that.
Right, readjust. Can you just clarify for our audience, because we were talking about how to talk to your children about tragic events when you think you might need help. There are a lot of different mental health professionals, and I think sometimes people might get confused about who they should go to. Like a psychiatrist, we know it's a doctor. Some parents might not know that it's a doctor who can prescribe the medication, but they're not doing the counseling. So can you just explain a little bit about the differences? You touched on it a little bit, but if I need help with this, I should go to this. Or, it might not be that cut and dry, but what are the differences in the mental health profession?
So clinically, I think we could all provide the therapy. I think that's a skill that every discipline has.
Right.
But it's really a matter of what you're contracted to do.
Okay.
What you decide that you're going to do. Typically, a psychiatrist is an MD, and they prescribe medication.
Right.
You may find a doctor that will actually do talk therapy.
Really?
It's typically not covered by insurance, because you're probably not gonna play both roles usually.
Right. Okay.
Typically.
So if you're a medical doctor, that's really where you're gonna kind of lie.
You do have the ability to do it.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
But that's just not typically what happens these days. But so for prescriptions, that's going to be a psychiatrist, but it can also be a nurse practitioner. Psychiatric nurse practitioner.
Psychiatric nurse practitioner.
Okay, and that person, that's a nurse that has her master's and has practiced under an MD for a certain amount of time, and then they can go out on their own. So that's that's who prescribes here in New York.
Okay, so in different states, it could be different.
It could be different.
Okay.
So that's who prescribes here in New York. Then I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and so I have my social work master's, and then I had to practice under somebody for 6 years before I could go on my. Well, it's a kind of steps. First, it's 3 years. This first 3 years, and that gets you to one step, and then the additional 3 years. Now you can do it completely on your own.
Okay.
So that's that. There's also so in psychologists again. Psychologists. There's many different types of psychologists. And they can provide the clinical practice for sure. Others will do psychological evaluations.
Right. Okay.
You have licensed mental health counselors.
Oh, okay. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, that's not. When I was in school, that
didn't exist.
That wasn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't
Yeah.
exist.
Yeah. That didn't exist. Well,
So-
the actual, because I remember when I was going to school for counseling, that licensure was just really, coming to the forefront.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It must be so rewarding to see changes in the individuals that you work with, and being able to talk to someone who has such you're really a sounding board for them, but you're also giving them strategies, and to see them implement those strategies and be of help it's rewarding, I'm sure.
Absolutely, it is.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time that when they come in, you're actually the strong ones. People think that therapy is about being weak or about not being able to handle things. To be able to say, you know what, I need help, that takes strength.
It does.
Especially when
It really
your
does.
whole family doesn't really believe in it.
Right, right.
Or your loved one doesn't believe in it.
And the thing is, too, about going to therapy is that you are so vulnerable, and can be so painful. So like you said, they're taking they're courageous and taking that step to actually get the help that they need. So yeah, it's not easy, but it really makes a big difference, I think.
And that's one of the first things that we talk about, that this is all about improvement, and that this is all about doing better, but there are risks to therapy as well, and we talk about that.
That's
and
right.
So we are going to talk about some things that are particularly painful.
Right.
You may make changes that are going to impact your relationships.
Right.
And so
right. That's true.
That's a risk.
That's a risk. You might say, you know what? I don't need to be with him anymore.
We have that conversation.
Right, yeah,
We
exactly.
Have that conversation.
Right.
There are going to be days where you're going to feel like I'm pushing you.
Yeah.
And that's
scary.
That's my job.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you're not going to really like me. That means we're really getting somewhere.
Right.
Now. So yeah, it's a very up and down kind of a process.
Right. So that brings me to the question of fit. How does someone know? How does a parent know when they're bringing their child to a therapist or they're going themselves? How do they know it's the right fit for them? And when is it time to say, you know what, this isn't working? How do they kind of know that?
I think you should ask your child, is this the right fit? I think that's a big piece.
And they'll probably tell you the truth, I'm sure.
Right. I think that's important. I think from the parent perspective, for me personally, like I said, I think that there is no working with the child without working with the parent.
Parents, right.
So that's the first thing. It really depends. With children, we technically have to tell them, the parent, what's going on in session.
Right.
But one of the things that I ask is, can you just respect the relationship that I'm trying to build with your child?
Right.
And just know that where appropriately, I will talk to you about what we need to talk about.
Right.
And obviously some of the limits of confidentiality is if a child is being hurt or is hurting themselves or doing something that's going to impact them in a negative way. I will let the parent know that.
Okay.
Also, we'll have family sessions, and so a lot of times the session before the family session, I'll talk to the child and say, all right, what do you want to talk about next week?
Right.
What's off the table for next
Got it.
week?
Oh, right. So you prep them.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Because
Exactly.
I always want them. There's so many different areas where kids don't have a choice, where they don't have a say.
So you give them that.
I absolutely do.
Right.
I think that's really important. And so I feel like that makes a good
That empowers
fit.
them.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
It
definitely.
does. You're not going to do the work that you're not a part of.
Right.
So
That's
you
true.
have to want to do this. It has to be what you want.
That's true.
And sometimes parents they get upset and they say, "Why are you giving them a choice?" But it's not a choice between something that's just so ridiculous and so harmful.
Right.
It's really just that, this is what I want to do, or this is kind of what's going on. I want to be able to see my sibling that I'm, whatever the
Whatever it
situation
might be,
is, that give a voice to that. Because going back to what you were saying about how to about signs and communication.
Right.
If you see that there's a breakdown in school and that there's just some type of a decline in functioning,
right,
there's a reason, and so let's find out what the reason is. And so
is.
once you know, it's really important to be prepared to try to act on it in some kind of way.
Yeah, and sometimes it's tough to get that reason from them too, you know?
Sometimes, not always.
Not always, yeah.
It's so funny
yeah.
because sometimes they're really just waiting to talk to somebody,
Yeah.
and then it all kind of comes out. That's happened.
Wow.
That's happened more
than
often
not.
than not.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then
Yeah.
a lot of times I might lose the parent in that way, or lose the child that way,
Right.
because the parent is not ready.
No, they're not.
They
ready
were just
for
they
it.
wanted me to fix
Right.
their kid.
Just the child, right?
Why are
yeah.
you talking about how me and my husband fight?
That's right.
Right?
Why are you all up in our business? No, it's true. It's very true. You know, it's a difficult thing. Like we said, it's a family system.
Yeah.
You know, nothing can be fixed without, you know, the whole family being involved.
Yeah.
You know, in the process. So tell us a little bit. We have like 5 minutes or so. So tell us a little bit about your practice, what services you provide, how someone can reach out to you if you know they need help and they're seeking you know, some assistance with what they might have
Sure.
going on.
So it's Broad Hollow Psychotherapy.
Oops, I knew I was going to drop that. Go ahead.
So glad it wasn't me. I thought I was going to be the one to do that.
No, I always do.
So we're located in Farmingdale.
Mm-hmm.
There are about 4 different clinicians that are there currently.
Okay.
And we all do some different things, but we definitely work with children
Okay.
and families. My focus is on trauma. And so, as I stated before, I do something for children called trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy.
Right.
And so it's an evidence-based practice. Evidence-based just means that it's been researched that it works.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people don't want to be in therapy for 20,
That's
25
right.
years.
Right, exactly.
You know,
Right.
but trauma-focused CBT is something that can happen over a 16-week period.
Oh, wow.
And so we're
Oh,
really
that's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're really working around a particular trauma,
Mm-hmm.
and there are different steps. There's
Okay.
education. The first thing, again, is establishing safety. So if there is some
Yeah.
type of there is
Safety,
a traumatic event that happens, the first thing I have to do is establish safety. Are they out of harm's way? Is this not happening anymore?
Okay.
So that's the very first thing, because you can't do the work without being safe.
Without them being safe.
And
Absolutely.
so then there's establishing safety. There's the education piece about this is what's going on. This is a trauma. This is what you may be experiencing.
Right, okay. Kind of validating.
Absolutely,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
absolutely. This is inside of your body. Then we go over calming techniques, because we're going to really talk about this traumatic event, and the
Right.
child needs to know how to be able to calm
Okay.
themselves. And so that's mindfulness practices, that's
Okay.
meditation, that's body scans, that's all different types of things.
Okay.
And then we go through what's called a trauma narrative, where they actually write out the trauma
Wow.
until they've resolved all of the cognitive distortions. So, for
Okay.
example, if they go through something and they say, "This is my fault," or if this, because again, children are self-centered. So,
Yes.
you know, mom and dad fight because I'm bad.
Right.
That's a cognitive distortion that we
Wow.
actually correct, but you need to
Okay.
get it out first in order for that to be corrected. So.
Okay, that's great. That is wonderful. So if somebody, you know, do you take insurance? That was a question. Okay, so most insurance you take. And how would they be able to reach out to you?
You can. So I just got my website was just revamped, so I love
Oh,
it.
okay.
And that's broadhollowpsychotherapy.com.
Okay.
Everything is really there. The insurance information,
Okay.
everything is there. Contact information is all there. The different therapists, the type of practice.
Okay.
It's, you know, it's all in the website.
It's all on the website.
You can even request an appointment
Oh,
there.
you can? Oh, that's great. Oh, okay. That's very convenient. I love that. So I want to thank you for joining us today. You know, a lot of useful information. You know, I think a lot of strategies and, you know, just ways parents can talk to their children about these, you know, these crazy times and how to cope and be able to cope themselves, you know. So again, I want to thank you for being with us. I want to let everybody know out there that you can follow me on Twitter at DeliTeach, DeliTeach, and you can also go to my website, verdeljones.com. And again, I would like to thank you. I also want to give another special shout out to our sponsor, Miss Nancy Vargas Johnson. If you are looking for a home or you want to sell your home, you can reach out to Miss Vargas Johnson. So again, I want to thank Sherry Ann Best for joining us. Please, if you need any assistance or help, make sure you reach out to her as well. So with that being said, everyone, have a good one.